Hey guys, it's Anthony Tucker, BHS Class of 2007, and we're here for another Alumni Chat, and I'm here with the coach and the Hall of Famer himself, Bartlesville Col-Hi Class at 1970, my 7th grade geography teacher, Mr. Gerald Thompson. Mr. Thompson, thanks for joining us today.
It was my pleasure, Anthony.
So before we tell all of my secrets from 7th grade, let's talk about how you ended up back home, because you graduated 1970. I think the article I read from Mr. Tupa was you were gone for what, 12 years? How long were you gone before you came back home? And I know it was Carol Green, right, that you started coaching for?
I was gone for 17 years.
17.
Came back in 87. So I was teaching in my first year out of college. I taught in Oklahoma City at Crooked Oak School District, which I will never forget. You know, my first year experience in the classroom. And then I moved to Tulsa and taught in Tulsa until I came home to Bartlesville in 1987 and started teaching at Central and coaching with Coach Green.
Did she recruit you to come back, or did you apply for the job?
No, I applied for the job. I was teaching. I had taught in public schools in Tulsa, and then I was teaching in Christian schools. And the Christian school closed, and I said, okay. And then, of course, you know, my good friend Earl Sears, which was from the class of 70 also, told me about a position that they had here in Bartlesville, and at first I didn't want to come back home. I said reluctantly, not wanting to come back home. But I did, and I've been here ever since 1987.
And Mr. Sears was, by that time in 87, he had been principal at Central for a little bit.
Yes.
But it's crazy you bring up, you know, our buddy Earl, because it's such a small world when we think about our graduates, either, you know, from Col-Hi, Sooner High, or BHS, how we all stay connected one way or another, because that had been 17 years in between the time that you and Mr. Sears had graduated together. Did you have family still in Bartlesville at the time?
Yes, so all my family was still here in Bartlesville. And so I came back to Bartlesville with myself and my 3 kids.
Wow.
Yes.
As a dad of 2, I've got 1 2-year-old and I got 1, and you know this, we stay connected on social, but in a 4-month-old. And so you know that struggle sometimes. You're praying and you're like, they're going to fall asleep. They're going to be okay. But that's a tough decision to make.
But it was the right decision.
Where did you go to elementary school?
I went to Douglas Elementary.
You went to Douglas?
Douglas through 6th grade, kindergarten through 6th grade.
And then went
to Central.
Went to Central?
Yes.
And then for people who don't know, you know, that was during segregation era. In Douglas. Was it just the Dragons or Purple Dragons?
It was the Dragons.
The Dragons. I can see the logo. There was a get-together of Douglas graduates not too long ago. I saw some photos of.
The Douglas Heirs reunion.
And then I heard a lot of it growing up on the west side. You know, I went to Oak Park and grew up in the Boys and Girls Club, so I had a lot of mentors that were part of the Douglas family. So they let me know about the 1955 Class B championship team. I was taught at a young age, because I would always say as a kid, like, well, we've never won a football state championship. And then, you know, like we were talking before off camera, growing up at the West Side Community Center as well, it's like, wait, I had an elder tell me, oh, wait, let me tell you the story. So when you made that move to Central, was that the first year that the school was integrated?
No, I think the integration had started before that. And but 6th grade was the last year that I went to Douglas. And made the move to Central.
Did you have siblings?
Yes.
Were they kind of same age or?
Younger.
Younger?
Yeah, I was oldest, so I was the first to enter Central.
Who was your principal at Central?
The principal at Central was Mr. Lee.
Mr. Lee?
Yeah, Mr. Lee was the principal at Central.
Was there a memory that sticks out to you from your time as a Central Cub?
As a Central Cub, gosh, I think my number one memory is just the teachers. Okay, all the teachers that we had. So it was the first time having teachers that were not African American.
Yeah.
And but overall, it was a good experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you talking about that, because I feel like that's an era, even though, I grew up and heard about this from elders, growing up on the West Side. It's something that our kids now probably don't hear about as often. And it's important. It's part of our history. And to talk about where we are now. And speaking about where we are now, in the old gym, as you and I will call it. So our old timers now.
Yes.
And this is called the Phillips Gym for those who are a little bit younger graduates. So you get the job, 87, you come back with Coach Green. Talk about the Lady Bruin. The bell will never get old. Talk about your time with the Lady Bruins. I mean, the late 80s, early 90s. I mean, there's some good times for the Bruins. They make a state championship game, correct?
Yes, yes. And that was with, that wasn't Coach Green. That was with Coach Berger and myself and Trish Pruitt. And that was probably in my mind, the greatest Brewers team ever. And that was with Yogi York, Renee Roberts, my daughter Essence Thompson, and Kristen Gall, Rebecca Swoops, Kendra Barnhart. Yeah. And pretty special group of ladies.
So they make the state title game.
Yeah. Yeah.
What was that, 89, 90?
That was 92.
92. So the same year the Bruins won their back-to-back.
Right.
You guys were in the state championship game.
Yes.
Yeah. Did you play? Who was it? Did you play Norman?
Choctaw.
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 So you played Choctaw.
Never will forget Choctaw.
Choctaw.
Yes.
Was it a tight game?
Yeah, it was a tight game. Very tight game. Yeah, very tight game, and went back and forth, back and forth, back and forth.
Yeah.
And we were the higher seed, and it was a great game. It was a tough loss. But it was pretty special being there, and that was the second group that had made it to the state tournament out of those group of girls.
And it's such a, we're looking at the banners now as we're here in the old gym. But, growing up as a kid in the 90s and early 2000s, you would hear about the Lady Bruins. You would hear about, Coach Tommy DeSalm in that era.
Right.
And we were built on that. But I feel like during that era, we were alive. This gym was alive, the whole community, because basketball had become it was just another part of life, or a facet of life, and it was part of our identity as a community. And I know that's something that Coach DeSalm is working on now, and I know both for the Bruins and Lady Bruins. But I'll tell you that I remember you on the sideline. I would be so proud. Me and my classmates, Central Cubs, would come over here and watch you coach the girls, because after Coach Berger left, you became the head coach for the Lady Bruins, and it was very hot in here, as we were talking about before off camera, before AC. But I just want you to let you know that we was always so proud to come over here and watch you, and we barely hear anything. But it was so cool to see you coaching the girls and see you so passionate, and then see you back in the classroom the next day, because that's a hard switch to make. Is you're back in the classroom dealing with, as we know, people who have been in the classroom and led, it's a lot going on, and be able to and whatever happened that night, you lose a heartbreaker, get blown out, have a big victory,
have to come back and teach.
Have to come back and teach, and hope that middle schoolers are on their best behavior, which is not always the case. So how many years were you head coach for the Lady Bruins?
For head coach for the Lady Bruins, I believe it was 6. It was 6 or 5.
Okay. And then you would go on to coach you would come back as an assistant coach
with the boys.
With
Coach Bart.
During the Bart era, which was very successful.
Yes.
It was a great group. I remember Mr. Johnson was a coach, and his late wife. When I was at the mid-high, I got to be her office aide for my 2 years.
Okay.
So I enjoyed my time.
Yes.
She always looked after me.
Oh, yes. Just beautiful lady.
Yes, she was. And I will tell you that during that era, we were back in that sense of the 90s. Like, this arena was full. We had Noah Hartsock. And I was telling Coach DeSalm yesterday, I remember when Blake Griffin, future number 1 overall pick, came here with his brother.
Yes.
And
I remember that also.
Yeah, him and Taylor. And then I think it was his dad was coaching at OCS. And I was like, oh, man, they are good.
Yes.
Yeah, and they both went to OU and both played professionally. But that was such a good run.
Yes.
What made you want to stay on and continue after being the head coach for the Lady Bruins? What made you say, hey, I want to do this with the boys, which you're still doing today?
I'm still doing today. I love basketball. Basketball has always been my passion.
Yeah.
And love working with kids.
Yeah.
And being retired now, I always tell people that, excuse me, I always tell people that you have to have something to do after The Price is Right is over. Something to do.
Yes.
Yeah, I caregive for my mom, my aunts and uncles, and I continue my basketball and they're all gone now, and so basketball it gives me that to do
something on the list.
Yes.
But you have a bunch of grandkids, right? And great grandkids. Yes. I see photos. I see.
Yes.
Now, talking about playing and the love of basketball, what was it like when you were here playing for Col-Hi?
Oh, it was, growing up, I watched the guys older than me, Ernie Jackson, Ernest Gary, Pat Sears, Pat Booty Sears was his nickname, and Moose Larson, Scott Martin, and always had that drive to play in this gym.
Yeah.
And so that kind of was my drive. Played with them at the Boys and Girls Club, younger, as a young kid, and watched them play in this gym, watched them go on and win the state title.
67.
In 67 against O.C. Douglas.
Yeah.
And that kind of was the drive of wanting to be a Wildcat basketball player, and played for one of the greatest coaches ever, Cecil Epperly.
And you see his name on things?
Yes. And so that was it. And, we just filled this gym and had great games.
Yeah.
Had great games with the Tulsa schools.
Yeah.
Yes. So.
And Sooner High? Because Sooner High was...
And Sooner, yeah.
Because Sooner was 68. Yeah.
That was our rival then. Excuse me.
What was it like, for kids that grew up and didn't know that we were split, between two high schools? What was it like when you guys came together and had to play against kids that you probably grew up, playing with, and now you guys are split up? 68, right, I think was their first year of having kids over there at Sooner High, now Bartlesville Madison Middle School. But what was that rivalry like?
Oh, it was intense.
Yeah.
I mean, but we were respectful of each other, but it was... You liken it to OU and OSU today.
Yeah. Like a family rivalry.
Yes. Yeah. It was very intense, and very. If you won that game, you were the king of the hill in the city.
Yeah. And we had some of that. We think back to Central Cubs and Madison Mustangs, where we still kind of had that split for a little bit before they can join, most of the teams.
Right.
And, middle school athletics, for our alums out there that haven't been in Bartlesville, they come to the high school for the most part during the morning. They have a dedicated hour. It is really proliferated and grown. There's middle school soccer. And it's been really great to create new avenues for kids to get involved with the Bruins program as a whole, regardless of whatever sport or activity you take place in or part in, to start younger. So you feel a part of the family.
Yes.
So let's travel back to, did you have a car that you drove to the high school?
No, we rode the bus.
You rode the bus?
With friends, yes.
Now, tell me, was there a go-to song that was like your jam? Because I looked up the number one song for 1970 when you graduated, and there was multiple Billboard number ones during that. There was "War" by Edwin Starr.
War.
By Edwin Starr.
Yes.
And
Edwin Starr.
And there were some Beatles. So what was your go-to song back in the day?
Well, I'd say my go-to group was the Spinners.
The Spinners? I've never heard of the Spinners.
Oh, really?
What
Yes.
genre were they?
Oh, they were kind of soul pop.
Okay.
Yeah, the Spinners.
Did they have awesome outfits?
One of their songs was Rubber Band Man.
Yeah.
And just a very good group.
Which has now been remade by T.I. If you've heard the rap song
Oh,
by
really?
T.I. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
There might be a different spin on Rubber Band Man now.
I'm sure it is.
So if the kids bring it up with you at basketball practice, you're like, okay, that's not the same thing.
Yes.
Number one movie at the box office, what do you think it was at the movie theaters back in 1970?
1970. I don't have a clue.
Love Story.
Oh, really?
I have no clue what that is. I looked up Love Story.
It was a good movie.
Okay. And also MASH had a movie? I guess there was I don't know.
MASH movie?
The MASH movie from the TV series.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yes, the 70s, I haven't watched a ton.
Yes.
What was The Graduate was from the 70s, I think. What's the one about Watergate? Speaking of history. Now it's just two guys talking about movies from many years ago. The Watergate movie, I can see Robert Redford.
Okay.
Yeah, where they uncover the whole Watergate spill. Was there a favorite dance or like homecoming or something that you look back really fond of outside of basketball about your time at Col-Hi?
I think the biggest thing was going to the canteen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've heard that from multiple generations now.
It was the canteen.
And I remember that.
Yes.
And our buddy Earl Sears, I remember him policing, the dancing and the songs. But even, during my era, it's like even in middle school. And I remember going to the canteen, and getting dropped off and making sure that, that the kids didn't see your mom's car. Like they didn't want me to see me showing up in the minivan. I love you, Mom. But it was so cool. And it was just kind of like a neutral place. Everybody got together.
And we said the canteen, and of course for us on the west side, we hung out at the West Side Community Center. Yeah. At the center.
Yeah,
the center was our spot.
That's where I learned to do like clay. Like we would have like art out there in that little auxiliary building. And then playing basketball. And then we would learn to play instruments. That's why I first tried. I wasn't very good at it, but I did try to play the saxophone. And then we would do plays and poetry, have a talent show. So now that I'm like saying it aloud, I'm like, we did a lot of cool stuff now that I think back that gave me practice reps on doing what I do today. So looking towards the future, now we go back, you get inducted to the Hall of Fame, right? You get to have a lot of players come back and kind of that you haven't seen in years. What was that like to see some of your former players come back and kind of pay tribute to you during that time when you got inducted?
Oh, into the Bartlesville Educators Hall of Fame? Oh, that's pretty special. Yeah. That's just, I've always positioned myself as a teacher first and coach second. And what I did in the classroom was first and foremost, to educate and challenge my students. And so to have them come back and be there for that day was very special. Yeah, and well-deserved. Yeah, great, thank you. Well-deserved. Thank you. Because if you think about it, you've lived out two different careers that, in my opinion, are Hall of Fame worthy, right? What you've done here on the court
as a player, as a coach, and then what you did in the classroom. Because we talked about, in our time together, it was 2001, 9/11 happens, why we're in class together. We were living American history at that time, and I will always harken back to that time of how you handled that. And you always handled your classroom with grace. You would always say something that stood out to me was, well, we got a little housekeeping to do today. We've got to catch up on some things. And it was always a safe place that I felt like that. And that's why when I saw you yesterday and you gave me a hug, it just brought back those memories of feeling safe.
Right.
And so that's why I say that you are a Hall of Famer in both athletics and just being a good dude.
Right, thank you.
And I think more positive male influence is something that, for me, I grew up with my mom, my 3 sisters. And so I sought out that kind of positive male influence. And I know that when I talk to you, I'm always just like, I'm so excited to talk to you.
Yes,
I'm like, hey.
Yes.
But, this is home.
Yes.
And like you said, sometimes you don't want to come back home and you're not sure it's the right thing.
Yes.
And I've been there myself. But it is special to connect.
Yes.
And that's when we were most naive and we were kids, and people know you from, for me, running around the West Side. They remember me 6 years old playing flag football at Boys and Girls Club. So it's cool to connect with those people, and I feel like over time those barriers that maybe some people have up in between each other go away, and we're just celebrating the time that we have together.
Yes.
But again, I want to thank you, Mr. Thompson, for joining us on today's episode.
Thank you, Anthony, very much. But one thing that I realized once I did come back home, that Bartlesville is a great place to raise kids. It's a great place.
And I second that, because that's why we ended up coming back home.
Yes.
And we are so blessed for the community that we have.
Yes.
We'll see you again for another episode of the Alumni Chat.